The dinner rush at Marcello's always hit hardest on Thursdays. Wealthy Manhattanites poured through the doors, seeking perfectly al dente pasta and the kind of wine that required a second mortgage. I balanced 3 plates of osso buco on my left arm, while scanning table numbers, my white blouse already clinging to my back despite the aggressive air conditioning. "Samantha, table 12 needs fresh parmesan," Rita called from the kitchen window, her weathered hands already grating another wedge before I could respond. I nodded, delivering the osso buco to a couple who barely glanced up from their phones. 6 years of waitressing had taught me to be invisible when needed. Tips were better when you materialized, only to refill wine glasses and vanish before dessert arrived. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. The babysitter. Again. "I'm really sorry, Sam, but I can't make it tonight. My daughter's running a fever and—" "It's fine, Monica. I hope she feels better." I hung up before she could offer more excuses. This was the 3rd cancellation in 2 weeks. I found Tyler in the back office where I'd left him 2 hours ago. His small frame hunched over construction paper and crayons. At 6 years old, he should have been home watching cartoons or playing with other kids. Instead, he sat in a cramped office that smelled of old receipts and industrial cleaner, carefully coloring inside the lines of a drawing only he understood. "Hey, buddy." I knelt beside him, brushing dark hair from his forehead. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge my presence. Typical. "You doing okay back here?" Rita appeared in the doorway, drying her hands on her apron. The 60-year-old cook had worked at Marcello's longer than I'd been alive. He's been good as gold. "Drew me 3 pictures already." She gestured to papers taped on the wall beside the desk. "You go finish your shift. I'll keep an eye on him." Guilt twisted in my stomach. But what choice did I have? Rent was due in 5 days, and Tyler's occupational therapy cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I squeezed his shoulder gently. He tolerated the touch without flinching, which counted as progress. The VIP section occupied the back corner of Marcello's, separated from the main dining room by frosted glass panels and velvet curtains. 4 tables reserved for customers who dropped hundreds on single bottles of wine. Tonight, 2 tables were occupied. Table 7 held a man in his early 30s, dark hair impeccably styled, wearing a suit that probably cost several $1,000s. His companion was older, silver-haired, with the careful posture of someone who'd spent decades watching his back. They spoke in low tones over untouched plates of veal piccata. Table 9 seated 4 men in business attire, one clearly holding court while the others listened with the kind of attentiveness that suggested he controlled their paychecks. Brandon Wells. I recognized him from previous visits. Loud, demanding, and generous with tips when you laughed at his jokes. "More wine for table 9. Marco, the floor manager, handed me a bottle of Barolo and tried a smile. Wells tips well. I pasted on my customer service expression and approached. Wells was mid-story, gesturing dramatically while his 3 companions chuckled on cue. "Gentlemen, your wine." I began pouring, starting with Wells. Finally. Thought we'd die of thirst back here. Wells didn't look at me, just pushed his glass closer. "What took so long?" "My apologies, sir. We had a slight delay in the kitchen." "Delay?" He snorted. "You know what I pay for meals here? Delays shouldn't exist." I finished pouring in silence, years of practice keeping my expression neutral. Wells launched back into his story, something about acquiring waterfront properties in Brooklyn. His companions nodded along, occasionally interjecting questions that fed his ego. I retreated to check on my other tables, refilling water glasses and clearing appetizer plates. The rain that had threatened all evening finally arrived, drops spattering against the tall windows in irregular rhythms. The cozy atmosphere inside Marcello's intensified warm lighting reflecting off polished wood and white linens. 30 minutes later, Rita appeared at my elbow during a lull. "Tyler wants to show you something." I tried to keep him back there, but you know how he gets when he fixates. My stomach dropped. "Rita, I can't leave the floor right now. Just 2 minutes. He's really proud of this drawing." I glanced around. My tables were settled, meals delivered, wine glasses full. Marco was dealing with a complaint at table 3. 2 minutes wouldn't hurt. Tyler waited in the hallway leading to the kitchen, bouncing slightly on his toes while clutching a piece of construction paper. His blue eyes were bright with rare excitement, and he thrust the drawing toward me the moment I appeared. You made this for me? I took the paper, studying the careful lines. A house, 2 stick figures, a yellow sun. This is beautiful, Ty. Is this us? He didn't answer verbally, just pointed at the taller figure, then at me, then at himself. I love it so much. I crouched down, meeting him at eye level. Let's put it in my locker so it stays safe, okay? He nodded, that small gesture of agreement flooding me with warmth. Communication, even nonverbal, felt like winning the lottery. We walked toward the kitchen together, Tyler's small hand in mine. He was careful about touching, only accepting it when he initiated, or from people he trusted completely. The list was short. Me, Rita, his therapist on good days. The hallway was narrow, barely wide enough for servers carrying trays to pass each other. Tyler hugged the wall while I led him forward. We were 3 steps from the kitchen entrance when a server burst through going the opposite direction, tray loaded with dirty dishes from table 9. Tyler startled, jerking backward. His elbow caught the edge of a service cart someone had left against the wall. The cart wobbled. A water pitcher sitting on top tipped, then fell. Glass shattered. Water spread across the tile floor in an expanding pool. Tyler froze, his breathing suddenly rapid and shallow. It's okay, buddy. It was an accident. I stepped between him and the mess, creating a barrier while a busboy rushed over with towels. You're okay. But Tyler wasn't okay. His hands flew to his ears, pressing hard against the sides of his head. His eyes squeezed shut, his small body beginning to rock. Sensory overload. The crash, the unexpected noise, the change in routine. All the therapy in the world couldn't always prevent meltdowns when the world became too much. Hey, I've got you. I knelt in the water, ignoring the cold seeping through my pants, and wrapped my arms around him. I've got you, Tyler. You're safe. He rocked harder, a low keening sound building in his throat. What the hell is going on out here? Brandon Wells stood at the entrance to the VIP section, his face flushed with wine and irritation. His 3 companions hovered behind him, looking uncomfortable. Marco appeared instantly, his practiced smile in place despite the panic in his eyes. My deepest apologies, Mr. Wells. A small accident. We'll have it cleaned up immediately. Wells's gaze fixed on Tyler, who was now humming loudly, hands still clamped over his ears while I tried desperately to calm him. Is that a kid? Wells stepped closer, his voice rising. You're letting children run around during dinner service? Sir, I assure you. Look at him. He's having some kind of episode. Wells gestured dismissively. This is supposed to be a fine dining establishment, not a daycare center. Heat flooded my face. I stood slowly, positioning myself between Wells and my son. He's 6 years old, and he had an accident. We're handling it. Wells' lip curled. Handling it? The kid's screeching like a... He stopped himself, but his expression completed the sentence. Tyler's humming grew louder, his rocking more violent. I'd seen this pattern before. We had maybe 90 seconds before he escalated into a full meltdown that could last an hour. I need to get him somewhere quiet, I said to Marco, abandoning any pretense of professional courtesy. Can you cover my tables? Of course, Sam. Go. I reached for Tyler, but Wells wasn't finished. You know what your problem is? He addressed me directly now, stepping close enough that I could smell expensive scotch on his breath. People like you bringing your defective kids into places they don't belong. There are facilities for that kind of thing. Institutions. The word hung in the air like poison. Something dark and cold settled in my chest. I'd faced ignorance before, had endured countless stares and whispered comments from strangers who didn't understand autism. But this naked cruelty, delivered with such casual venom, stole my breath. He's not defective. My voice came out steady despite the rage building behind my sternum. He's autistic. There's a difference. Right, autistic. Retarded. Whatever the politically correct term is these days. Wells waved his hand dismissively. Point is, the rest of us shouldn't have to deal with it while trying to enjoy a meal we're paying good money for. Tyler's keening crescendoed into a cry, his small hands hitting the sides of his head in distress. I abandoned Wells entirely, dropping to gather Tyler into my arms. He fought briefly, overwhelmed, before collapsing against me. I'm sorry you had to witness that, Mr. Wells. Marco's voice was strained. Please, return to your table. Dessert is on the house tonight. Damn right it is. Wells started to turn away, then paused. And get that thing out of here before it disturbs my business associates any further. I stopped breathing. That thing. He called my son a thing. That's unnecessary, sir. The voice came from behind Wells, quiet, but carrying the kind of authority that made everyone in the hallway go still. The man from table 7 stood there, hands in his pockets, expression calm, but radiating something dangerous beneath the surface. Up close, he was taller than I'd realized, easily over 6 feet, with dark eyes that held Wells in an unwavering stare. Wells straightened, squaring his shoulders. Excuse me? I said that's unnecessary. The man took 2 steps forward, closing the distance until he stood between Wells and where I knelt holding Tyler. The child had an accident. His mother is addressing it. Your commentary adds nothing productive to the situation. Who the hell are you? Franco Ricchetti. He said it simply, like he was stating the weather. The effect on Wells was immediate. His face paled, bravado evaporating. Behind him, his 3 companions exchanged nervous glances. Mr. Ricchetti, I didn't realize... Wells stammered slightly. I was just... leaving. Franco completed the sentence. You were just leaving. I think your dinner is finished. Then it wasn't a suggestion. Wells seemed to understand this instinctively, nodding quickly. Of course. Yes. We were just about to ask for the check anyway. Marco will bring it to you. I suggest you settle your bill and depart. Franco's tone remained conversational, but something in it made the temperature drop. Immediately would be best. Wells practically fled back to his table, his companions scrambling after him. Marco hovered uncertainly, clearly unsure how to handle whatever dynamic was unfolding. Franco turned to me, and his expression softened fractionally. Is he all right? I held Tyler tighter, his crying diminishing to hiccuping sobs against my shoulder. He will be. Thank you for intervening. No thanks necessary. Franco glanced at Tyler, and something passed across his face. Pain, maybe. Recognition. I understand how difficult this can be. Before I could respond, he walked back to his table without another word. Marco helped me get Tyler to the office, where Rita already had a blanket and his favorite stuffed elephant waiting. Tyler gradually calmed, his breathing evening out as the quiet and familiar surroundings soothed his overloaded senses. You take your time, honey, Rita said, patting my shoulder. I'll watch your tables. 20 minutes passed before Tyler fell asleep, exhausted from the meltdown. I held him in the office chair, my uniform soaked with water and tears, and tried to process what had happened. Someone knocked softly on the doorframe. Marco stood there looking apologetic. Sam, Wells and his party left. But, the gentleman from table 7 wanted me to give you this. He held out a small envelope. He specifically said it's for you only. I took it, confused. Inside was $3,100 bills and a business card with just a phone number printed on it. No name, no company. Just 10 digits in elegant font. What is this? Marco shook his head. He settled his bill, asked who you were, then told me to make sure you got that. Said something about therapy not being cheap and everyone deserving help. Then he left. $3,000. More money than I made in a month. From a complete stranger who'd witnessed my son's meltdown and decided to... What? I stared at the bills, my mind unable to process the gesture. Who is he? I asked. Marco's expression turned careful. Franco Ricchetti. He owns several businesses in Manhattan. Restaurants, some real estate. He comes in maybe once a month. Always quiet. Always professional. He paused. There are rumors, but that's all they are. Rumors. The way he said it made clear what kind of rumors. The way Wells had recognized the name. The immediate deference and fear. I looked down at Tyler sleeping peacefully in my arms, then at the money in my hand that could pay for 2 months of his therapy. Whatever Franco Ricchetti was, whatever he did, he'd stood up for my son when no one else had. And that gesture, that kindness from a stranger, felt more valuable than any amount of cash. I tucked the money carefully into my locker and finished my shift in a daze. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets wet and gleaming under streetlights. Tyler slept against my shoulder as I waited for a cab, his small hand clutching his drawing of our house. The business card stayed in my pocket, a mystery I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. 3 days passed before I worked up the courage to call the number on Tyler's therapy clinic. The receptionist who answered sounded confused when I asked about payment. "Mrs. Cooper, your son's account shows a credit of $45,000. 6 months of intensive therapy, fully covered. The payment came through 3 days ago from the Luca R. Foundation." I gripped my phone tighter, standing in my tiny kitchen while Tyler arranged his toy cars in precise rows on the living room floor. I didn't authorize any foundation to pay for his treatment. The foundation specializes in supporting families with special needs children. They contacted us directly, verified Tyler's enrollment, and processed the payment. It's all legitimate, I assure you. After I hung up, I stared at the business card Franco Ricchetti had left me. Just a phone number, no explanation. $45,000 was more than I made in a year before taxes. Nobody gave away that kind of money without wanting something in return. I spent my lunch break at the public library, searching for information about the Luca R. Foundation. The website was professional but sparse. Established 8 years ago, focused on providing financial support and resources to families caring for children with developmental disabilities. No photos of staff, no personal testimonials, just clinical descriptions of their mission. The foundation's main office was listed in Midtown. I checked my reflection in the library bathroom mirror, smoothing down my hair and wishing I'd worn something nicer than jeans and a faded sweater. Too late now. I had 2 hours before I needed to pick up Tyler from his afternoon session. The office occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower that made my apartment building look like a relic from another century. The elevator opened onto a reception area decorated in soothing neutrals, with framed photographs of children on the walls. Not glamour shots, but candid moments. A girl with Down syndrome laughing on a swing. A boy in a wheelchair painting at an easel. A toddler with thick glasses reaching for bubbles. "Can I help you?" The receptionist was young, professional, her smile practiced but genuine. "I'm looking for information about the foundation. My son received a grant, and I'd like to speak with someone about it." "Of course. May I have your name?" "Samantha Cooper." Her fingers flew across her keyboard, then her eyebrows rose slightly. "1 moment, please." She picked up her phone, spoke quietly into it, then hung up. "Mr. Ricchetti will see you. 3rd door on your right." My stomach clenched. So he was here. I'd half hoped to gather information and leave without confronting him directly. The office was smaller than I expected, lined with bookshelves instead of the expensive art I'd imagined. Franco sat behind a desk covered in manila folders and grant applications, his suit jacket draped over his chair, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked up when I entered, and something flickered across his face. "Surprise, maybe. Mrs. Cooper. I wasn't expecting you to track me down quite so quickly." He stood, gesturing to the chairs facing his desk. "Please sit. I'm not here to thank you." I remained standing, holding my purse strap like a lifeline. "I'm here to understand why a stranger paid $45,000 for my son's therapy. Because he needs it. And you couldn't afford it." Franco's directness caught me off guard. "The foundation exists to help families exactly like yours. You don't know anything about my family. I know you're a widow working double shifts at Marcello's. I know your son is 6 years old and has autism. I know you're drowning in medical bills and you haven't bought yourself new shoes in 2 years. He paused, watching my reaction. "I know that 3 nights ago, a grown man called your child defective, and you stood there protecting him while your world fell apart." Heat flooded my cheeks, anger and embarrassment mixing. "You investigated me. The foundation investigates all grant recipients. We need to verify that funds go to families who genuinely need assistance." He moved around the desk, leaning against its edge. "But yes, in this case I took a personal interest." "Why?" The question burst out sharper than intended. "Because you feel guilty? Because you want to play hero?" Something dark crossed his face, pain surfacing before he controlled it. "Because 17 years ago, my younger brother threw himself off a bridge after being bullied his entire life for having Down syndrome. Because I was 19 years old and too consumed with family business to notice how much he was suffering. Because I've spent nearly 2 decades trying to figure out how to make that right, and writing checks is the only thing I know how to do. The raw honesty in his voice stole my breath. This wasn't practiced sympathy or calculated manipulation. This was a wound that had never properly healed. I'm sorry about your brother. I lowered myself into the chair, my anger deflating. But I can't accept this kind of money from you. It's too much. It's already paid. Franco returned to his chair, folding his hands on the desk. The clinic won't refund it, and Tyler's therapy schedule is set for the next 6 months. You can refuse future assistance, but this is done. I wanted to argue, to maintain some shred of independence and dignity. But the practical part of my brain, the part that had been quietly panicking about Tyler's waiting list for speech therapy, whispered that pride was a luxury I couldn't afford. What do you want in return? I asked carefully. Franco was quiet for a long moment. I want to spend time with your son. Every maternal instinct I possessed screamed danger. Absolutely not. Not alone, not unsupervised, with you present in public places for limited periods. He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. I've been running this foundation for 8 years, and I've never met a single child we've helped. I sign checks and approve grants, but I don't understand. I don't know what these families actually need beyond money. I don't know how to make the foundation more effective. So hire a consultant, interview parents. Don't use my son as some kind of research project. You're right. He nodded, surprising me. That's exactly what it would be initially. But I'm asking anyway, because Tyler reminded me of Luca in that hallway. The way he covered his ears, the way he rocked. Luca did the same thing when he was overwhelmed. His voice dropped. I couldn't help Luca. Maybe I can learn to help other children like him. Maybe spending time with Tyler will teach me something that all the research papers and grant applications can't. I studied him, trying to reconcile this vulnerable confession with the man who'd made Brandon Wells flee with just his name. One meeting. Public place. I can end it at any time if Tyler shows any distress. Relief washed over Franco's features. Thank you. And if this is some kind of elaborate scheme, if you're using my son for anything other than what you've said, I'll find a way to make you regret it. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I don't doubt that for a second. We arranged to meet at Central Park the following Saturday afternoon. Franco insisted on 2 o'clock, claiming the lighting and foot traffic were optimal for children who might feel overwhelmed by crowds. The specificity of his knowledge surprised me. Saturday arrived gray and cool. Perfect autumn weather. Tyler wore his favorite blue jacket, the one with deep pockets where he stored small toys and smooth stones. He clutched his stuffed elephant as we walked through the park, his free hand in mine. Franco waited near the Bethesda fountain, wearing jeans and a dark sweater instead of the suits I'd seen him in previously. Somehow, the casual clothes made him seem more dangerous, not less. Without the corporate armor, I could see the lean muscle of his shoulders, the careful way he held himself, like someone always ready for trouble. Tyler, this is Franco. He's a friend. I knelt beside my son, keeping my voice calm and steady. He's going to spend some time with us today. Is that okay? Tyler didn't respond verbally, just studied Franco with his careful, evaluating gaze. Children with autism often notice details others missed. Whatever Tyler saw in Franco's face must have satisfied him, because he didn't retreat behind me like he did with most strangers. Franco pulled a small box from his jacket pocket and sat down on the grass, cross-legged, making himself smaller and less threatening. He opened the box to reveal a cube covered in colored squares. A Rubik's Cube, but larger than standard, with bright primary colors. Tyler's attention locked onto it immediately, his fingers twitching with interest. "Do you like puzzles?" Franco asked, not expecting an answer. He twisted the cube slowly, showing how the sections moved. My brother loved these. He could solve them faster than anyone I knew. Tyler dropped my hand and moved closer, drawn by the cube's movement and color. Franco offered it to him, and Tyler took it with both hands, turning it over and examining each face carefully. For the next 2 hours, I watched Franco sit on the damp grass, patiently showing Tyler different combinations and patterns. He never rushed, never grew frustrated when Tyler wanted to repeat the same sequence 15 times. He simply existed in Tyler's world, matching my son's pace with a patience that most paid therapists struggled to maintain. He's doing really well. I finally sat beside them, my professional distance eroding. Most new people overwhelm him. I'm not doing anything special. Franco glanced at me, then back at Tyler. Just letting him lead. Luca taught me that. He'd shut down completely if you pushed him. But if you waited, let him come to you in his own time, he'd share his whole world. How old was Luca when he died? 16. I was 19, already working in the family business. His jaw tightened. I thought I was protecting him by making money, building power. I didn't realize I was abandoning him when he needed me most. Tyler looked up suddenly, studying Franco's face. Then, deliberately, he placed the cube in Franco's palm and covered Franco's hand with both of his. The gesture was unmistakable. Comfort. Connection. Franco froze, staring at their joined hands like Tyler had performed a miracle. He doesn't do that with anyone outside family. My voice came out thick with unexpected emotion. Ever. I don't deserve it. Franco's whisper was barely audible. But I'll try to. We stayed until Tyler grew tired, his movements becoming less coordinated, signaling approaching sensory overload. As we walked back toward the park exit, Franco fell into step beside me. There's something else. He pulled out his phone, scrolling to a contact. The foundation has a list of caregivers who specialize in autism. They're thoroughly vetted, trained in behavioral therapy, patient and reliable. I know you've been having trouble with your current babysitter canceling. My defenses rose automatically. I can't afford specialized care. The foundation covers it, part of family support services. We provide up to 20 hours per week of respite care for parents. It was too perfect, too convenient. Why didn't you mention this 3 days ago when we talked? Because I needed to see if I could actually do this, if I could spend time with a child like Luca without falling apart. He stopped walking, his expression serious. I meant what I said, Samantha. I want to learn. Tyler's teaching me things I didn't understand before, and it's only been 2 hours. If you'll allow it, I'd like to do this again. Once a week, same time, same place. You set all the boundaries. Tyler tugged my hand, ready to go home. I looked between my son and the man who'd somehow managed to connect with him in a single afternoon. Once a week. I agreed carefully. We'll see how it goes. Franco's smile transformed his entire face, making him look younger, less burdened. Thank you. That evening, a woman named Patricia called about the caregiver position. She had 15 years of experience with autistic children, references from 4 families, and certification in applied behavior analysis. She could start Monday if I wanted. I wanted, desperately. But accepting felt like another step deeper into whatever arrangement I'd made with Franco Ricchetti. Another thread tying us together in ways I didn't fully understand yet. Tyler brought me his drawing pad before bed, showing me a new picture. 3 stick figures this time. 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small. In the tall figure's hand, a colorful square that could only be the cube. Is that Franco? I asked. Tyler pointed at the tall figure, then at himself, then at me. The 3 of us, standing in the park together. I kissed the top of his head, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo, and wondered what exactly I'd gotten us into. Patricia turned out to be everything the foundation promised. She arrived on Monday wearing comfortable clothes and carrying a backpack full of sensory tools Tyler had never seen before. Within 15 minutes, she had him engaged with a weighted lap pad and textured fidget toys. I left for my shift at Marcello's feeling lighter than I had in months. The routine Franco and I established settled into place with surprising ease. Tuesday and Saturday afternoons at 2 o'clock, various locations around Manhattan. Always public, always supervised, always ending when Tyler showed signs of fatigue. The second week, Franco brought a chess set. Not a standard one, but oversized pieces with magnetic bases and bright colors that Tyler could distinguish easily. We'll start simple, just learning how each piece moves. Franco sat cross-legged on a bench in Bryant Park, the board between them. This is a pawn. It moves forward 1 square at a time. Tyler picked up the red pawn, examining it from every angle before placing it back exactly where it had been. Then he picked up the blue knight, turning it slowly. That one's trickier. Knights move in an L shape. Franco demonstrated with another piece, his movements slow and deliberate. They can jump over other pieces too. I watched from a nearby bench. pretending to read a book while actually observing every interaction. Franco's patience never wavered, even when Tyler spent 20 minutes just arranging and rearranging the pieces by color instead of playing. He seemed content to exist in whatever activity Tyler chose, adapting rather than directing. The third week, something shifted. We arrived at the park, and Tyler's head turned immediately, scanning the area. When he spotted Franco standing near the fountain, Tyler's whole body relaxed. He pulled away from my hand and walked directly to Franco, holding up the small notebook he carried everywhere. Franco knelt down, accepting the notebook Tyler offered. Inside were drawings, dozens of them, chess pieces in various arrangements, the Rubik's Cube from different angles, and on the last page, a stick figure with dark hair holding a chess piece. "You drew me." Franco's voice was thick with emotion he didn't bother hiding. "This is incredible, Tyler." Tyler reached out and touched Franco's hand, just briefly, before pulling back and opening his own backpack to retrieve the chess set Franco had given him to keep. "He's been practicing at home." I joined them, unable to maintain my observer distance. "Every night before bed, he sets up the pieces exactly how you showed him. He remembers the positions." Franco looked at me, wonder clear in his expression. "That's remarkable spatial memory. His therapist says many autistic children have incredible memory for patterns and sequences. Tyler can remember the exact arrangement of his toy cars from 3 days ago." Franco turned back to Tyler, his attention absolute. "Want to try moving the pieces today? We can play a real game." They played for an hour, Franco gently guiding but never forcing. Tyler moved pieces seemingly at random at first, but gradually I noticed patterns emerging. He was testing, learning the boundaries of what each piece could do. My night shifts continued at Marcello's, the familiarity of the work comforting after days spent navigating the strange new dynamic with Franco. Thursday evening, I was refilling wine glasses in the main dining room when I noticed him sitting alone at table 12, reading something on his phone while a plate of carbonara sat untouched. "I didn't know you were coming in tonight." I approached his table, suddenly self-conscious about my work uniform and the smell of kitchen grease probably clinging to my hair. Franco looked up, setting his phone aside. I had a meeting nearby. Figured I'd grab dinner somewhere familiar. "The carbonara's getting cold." I got distracted. He gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Take a break. Sit for a minute." I shouldn't have. I had 4 other tables and Marco was already giving me looks for lingering. But I sat anyway, folding my hands in my lap to keep them still. "How was Tyler's session today?" Franco asked. "Good. His speech therapist thinks he might be ready to try verbal communication exercises soon. Not full sentences, but single words for basic needs." "That's progress." "It is." I studied him, this man who'd inserted himself into our lives and somehow become essential in just 3 weeks. "Why do you really care so much? And don't tell me it's just about Luca." Franco was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. "When Luca died, I promised myself I'd never ignore someone vulnerable again, but I broke that promise every day for 17 years. I built businesses, made money, accumulated power, and I never once got down on the floor with a child who needed help. I just wrote checks and convinced myself that was equivalent to caring. It's not nothing. Those checks help families survive, but they don't require me to feel anything. They don't require me to risk caring about someone and failing them again." He met my eyes, his dark gaze intense. "Tyler makes me feel things I've avoided for nearly 2 decades. It's uncomfortable and terrifying, but it's also the first time in years I've felt like a decent human being." The honesty in his words hit me square in the chest. I wanted to respond, to tell him I understood that feeling of being terrified by your own emotions. But Marco caught my eye from across the room, tapping his watch meaningfully. "I need to get back to work." I stood, smoothing down my apron. "But Franco, you are a decent human being. You just forgot for a while." His smile was small but genuine. "I'll try to remember that." Saturday's meeting location was the Museum of Natural History. Franco had arranged for us to visit during a special sensory-friendly hour when lights were dimmed and crowd sizes limited. Tyler moved through the dinosaur exhibits with unusual ease, his fascination with the massive skeletons overriding his usual anxiety about new environments. "Look at the size of those teeth." Franco pointed to the T-Rex's jaw, Imagine trying to brush those every night. It was such an absurd comment that I laughed out loud, the sound echoing in the vast hall. Tyler looked at me, startled by the noise, then at Franco, then back at me. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his small face. We spent 2 hours wandering the exhibits, Franco providing a running commentary that was equal parts educational and ridiculous. Tyler didn't respond verbally, but his attention never wavered, his small hand finding Franco's at one point when the crowd near the meteorite display grew unexpectedly large. He trusts you. I watched them examine a display of fossils together. That's not something he gives easily. The feeling's mutual. Franco glanced at me over Tyler's head. I trust him too. And you. The words settled between us, weighted with implications neither of us was ready to address directly. We were leaving through the gift shop when everything fell apart. Tyler had been fine all morning, his anxiety managed by the controlled environment and predictable routine, but the gift shop was chaos. Too many people, too many sounds, fluorescent lights blazing overhead, and music playing from hidden speakers. Tyler's hands flew to his ears, his breathing instantly rapid and shallow. I recognized the warning signs immediately. We need to leave. Now. I tried to steer him toward the exit, but he'd already locked up, his body going rigid with sensory overload. People were starting to stare. A woman pulled her daughter away from us, as if autism might be contagious. A man in an expensive coat made an annoyed sound, forced to walk around us where Tyler had frozen in the middle of the aisle. I've got him. Franco's voice was calm, controlled. He knelt beside Tyler, not touching yet. Tyler, look at me. Can you look at me? Tyler's eyes were squeezed shut, his keening growing louder. Franco moved without hesitation, wrapping Tyler in a firm bear hug, applying deep pressure to his small body. I've got you. You're safe. I'm right here. I'd told Franco about deep pressure therapy during one of our conversations, but I hadn't expected him to remember the exact technique, much less implement it so perfectly. He held Tyler with firm, even pressure, not restraining but containing, giving Tyler's overwhelmed nervous system something solid to focus on. There's a quiet room for nursing mothers past the restrooms. A museum employee appeared at my elbow. You can use it. Follow me. We moved quickly, Franco carrying Tyler while I cleared the path ahead. The room was small, dimly lit, blissfully silent. Franco sat on the floor with Tyler still in his arms, maintaining the pressure while Tyler gradually calmed. 20 minutes passed before Tyler's breathing evened out. His rigid body slowly relaxed, melting against Franco's chest. When he finally opened his eyes, they were wet with tears, but the wild panic had faded. You're okay. Franco's voice was barely a whisper. You did so good, Tyler. So good. Tyler made a small sound, not quite a word, but close. His hand patted Franco's arm twice, deliberate and intentional. Thank you, in the language Tyler used. How did you know to do that? I asked once we'd gotten Tyler home and settled on the couch with his favorite blanket. Patricia had left dinner in the fridge with a note about Tyler's good afternoon session, completely unaware of the crisis that had followed. Franco stood in my tiny kitchen, looking out of place among the mismatched cabinets and ancient appliances. I've spent the last month reading everything I could find about autism. Books, research papers, parent forums, therapy guides. I needed to understand. You studied. Obsessively. He turned to face me. I told you, Samantha. I'm not going to fail another child because I didn't bother to learn what they needed. The intensity of his commitment should have intimidated me. Instead, it kindled something warm and dangerous in my chest. I stepped closer, drawn by a force I couldn't name. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone colder, more calculating. Not someone who spends his free time memorizing sensory integration techniques. Franco's dark eyes held mine. People aren't just one thing. I can be both. The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility. Then Tyler called out from the living room, needing me, and the spell broke. Franco left shortly after, but the warmth of his presence lingered in my small apartment like smoke. It wasn't until Tuesday that I noticed the man. Medium height, average build, wearing jeans and a jacket that could belong to anyone. He stood across the street from Tyler's therapy clinic, watching the entrance with casual intensity. When we emerged an hour later, he was gone. Wednesday, I saw him again. Different location, different clothes, same careful distance. Thursday, he was outside Marcello's when my shift ended at midnight. I called Franco before I could talk myself out of it. He answered on the second ring. There's someone following me. No preamble, no small talk. I've seen him 3 times this week. Is this your doing? Silence. Then, yes. The confirmation knocked the breath from my lungs. You're having me surveilled. I'm keeping you safe. Franco's voice was matter of fact. You and Tyler. My association with you, even innocent, makes you potential targets. I couldn't live with myself if something happened because I was careless. You had no right to make that decision for me. You're right, I didn't. But I made it anyway. And I won't apologize for it. He paused. The man you've noticed is Paul. Former Secret Service, highly trained, completely trustworthy. There are 2 others you haven't spotted. They'll maintain distance unless a threat presents itself. I should have been furious. Should have told him to call off his people and stay away from us. But a part of me, the part that had been terrified walking home alone at night for years, felt relief mixed with the anger. If I accept this, I have conditions. Name them. They stay invisible. No interference in my daily life. I maintain complete autonomy over every decision regarding Tyler and myself. I took a breath. And the second there's a real threat, the second I think Tyler is in actual danger because of you, I disappear. You'll never find us again. Understood. Anything else? Stop making decisions for me. If something affects us, you tell me first. Even if you think I won't like it. Deal. He sounded almost relieved. Samantha, thank you. For what? For not running. Most people would have. I hung up without responding, staring at my reflection in the dark window. Who was I becoming, accepting surveillance and danger as the price of whatever this was developing between us? 2 blocks away, in an office with a view of the river, Brandon Wells spread photographs across his desk. Samantha leaving work, Tyler at therapy, Franco at the park with both of them. The private investigator had been thorough, documenting every interaction over the past 3 weeks. You're sure about the woman's identity? Wells asked. Samantha Cooper, 28 widow, works at Marcello's. Ricchetti's been spending significant time with her and the kid. There's definitely something personal there. Wells smiled, the expression cold and calculated. Ricchetти had humiliated him publicly, made him look weak in front of important business associates. That kind of disrespect demanded response, and Wells had finally found the perfect angle. He wouldn't touch the woman or her disabled brat. That would be too obvious. Instead, he'd destroy Franco Richetti using every tool at his disposal. The contacts, the political leverage, the connections with organizations that made even Mafia bosses nervous. Keep documenting everything. Wells pushed the photographs back toward the investigator. I want to know everyone Richetti associates with, every business he owns, every transaction he makes. We're going to take him apart piece by piece. The investigator gathered the photos and left. Wells poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and raised the glass toward the window, toasting his own reflection. To revenge, he murmured. And to teaching arrogant criminals that some people can't be pushed around. 6 weeks had transformed everything and nothing. Franco still met us twice a week, still brought puzzles and chess pieces, still sat on park benches teaching Tyler patterns that most adults couldn't master. But something had shifted beneath the surface, a current pulling us toward deeper water neither of us acknowledged aloud. I'd like to invite you both to dinner. Franco made the offer on a Tuesday afternoon, while Tyler arranged magnetic tiles into elaborate geometric structures. At my place, nothing formal, just a meal. I should have said no. Accepting felt like crossing a line we'd carefully avoided. But Tyler looked up at Franco's words, his blue eyes bright with interest, and I found myself nodding before caution could override instinct. Saturday evening, 6 o'clock. I'll send a car. We can take the subway. Samantha. Franco's voice was gentle but firm. Let me send a car. Please. The vehicle that arrived Saturday was sleek and black, the driver professional and silent. Tyler pressed his face to the window during the 20-minute drive, watching the city lights blur past. I smoothed down the simple navy dress I'd chosen, suddenly aware of how out of place I'd feel in whatever penthouse Franco called home. The building rose 40 stories above Central Park West, all glass and steel and understated wealth. A doorman greeted us by name, directing us to a private elevator that required a key card to access the top floor. Tyler held my hand tighter as we ascended, the numbers climbing higher than either of us had ever been. Franco answered the door in jeans and a dark sweater, barefoot, looking more approachable than I'd ever seen him. "Welcome. Come in." The penthouse was spacious but surprisingly warm. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture that looked lived in rather than displayed, floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the park below. But what caught my attention were the personal touches. Framed photographs lined one wall. A young Franco with an older couple who must have been his parents. A teenage boy with a wide smile and distinctive features sitting at a piano. Luca. That's my favorite picture of him. Franco followed my gaze. Taken a month before he died. He'd just learned a new piece, something by Mozart. He played it 17 times in a row that day. Tyler had already discovered the aquarium built into the far wall, a massive tank filled with colorful fish and living coral. He stood transfixed, his small hands pressed against the glass. I had it installed 2 years ago. Thought it might be calming. Franco joined Tyler, pointing out different species. "That's a clownfish. See the orange and white stripes? And the blue one hiding in the coral is a tang." Tyler's fingers traced the path of a fish swimming past, his expression peaceful in the way it only got when he felt completely safe. Franco had set the dining table for 3, with a booster seat already positioned for Tyler. The kitchen smelled incredible. Garlic and cheese and something rich I couldn't identify. "You actually cooked?" I watched him move through the kitchen with practiced ease, draining pasta and adjusting heat on the stove. "Cacio e pepe, my mother's recipe. She insisted I learn before I left home. Said no son of hers would starve because he couldn't boil water." He plated the pasta with careful precision. "I haven't made it in years. Forgot how much I missed it." The meal was simple and perfect. Tyler ate more than usual, the familiar environment, and Franco's presence easing his typical mealtime anxiety. We talked about small things. Tyler's progress in therapy, a new book about pattern recognition Franco had ordered, the upcoming renovation of the park's playground. After dinner, Tyler explored the guest room Franco had prepared, complete with soft lighting and a weighted blanket. Within 30 minutes, he'd fallen asleep on the bed, his stuffed elephant tucked under one arm. "He's out." I returned to find Franco on the terrace, 2 glasses of red wine already poured. This happens when he feels secure somewhere. His body finally lets him rest. Good. He should feel safe here. Franco handed me a glass, gesturing to the lounge chairs positioned to face the park. "You both should." The October air was cool, but not cold, the city sprawling below us in a carpet of lights. I sipped the wine, letting the silence stretch comfortably between us. "Can I ask you something?" I finally spoke, my voice quiet. "What happened to your family after Luca died? You mentioned your brother, but never anyone else." Franco stared into his wine, the amber liquid catching the light from inside. "My mother never recovered. She blamed herself. Spent 2 years in a depression so deep she barely left her room. When she finally did leave, it was in a casket. Heart attack, the doctor said. But I think she just gave up. Decided living without Luca wasn't worth the effort." The rawness in his voice made my chest ache. "And your father?" Threw himself into the family business with a violence he'd never shown before. Every negotiation became a war, every competitor an enemy to be destroyed. He used grief as fuel, turned it into something cold and brutal. Franco's jaw tightened. I was 21, suddenly responsible for operations I barely understood, trying to channel the same rage my father had because it was easier than feeling the loss. I became exactly like him, ruthless, efficient, empty. "You're not empty now." "No. But I was for a very long time." He turned to look at me, his dark eyes holding mine. "Tyler reminded me what it feels like to care about something beyond power and money. You both did." The intensity of his gaze made my pulse quicken. I looked away, focusing on the park below. I understand using work to avoid feeling things. After Anthony died, I threw myself into providing for Tyler. Every shift, every extra hour, it was easier than sitting still long enough to process what I'd lost. "How did it happen, if you don't mind me asking?" "Construction accident. Scaffolding collapse on a high-rise in Queens." He was 40 feet up when the supports failed. The words came easier now. 6 years of distance softening the sharp edges. I was 8 months pregnant. Felt the contraction start while the hospital chaplain was still explaining that Anthony didn't survive the fall. Tyler came 7 weeks early, barely 4 pounds, spent his first month in the NICU. Franco reached across the space between our chairs, his hand finding mine. The contact was warm, solid, grounding. The autism diagnosis came when he was 2. I'd suspected before then, but having it confirmed felt like another loss somehow. Not of Tyler, but of the future I'd imagined. The one where Anthony taught our son to ride a bike and play catch. Where Tyler had friends and birthday parties and all the normal milestones. I paused. The guilt I'd carried for years rising in my throat. I blamed myself for a long time. Thought maybe the stress of losing Anthony while pregnant had damaged something. Rationally, I know that's not how autism works. Emotionally, I've never fully forgiven myself for not being strong enough to protect him. Samantha, Franco's grip on my hand tightened. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. Tyler's lucky to have you as his mother. Some days I'm not sure he'd agree. Some days I feel like I'm failing him constantly. You're not. Trust me on that. He stood, pulling me gently to my feet until we were standing close together, the city lights casting shadows across his face. You're giving him exactly what he needs. Love, patience, acceptance. That's more than most children ever receive. The air between us changed, charged with something we'd both been avoiding. Franco's hand rose slowly, his fingers brushing my cheek with a tenderness that made my breath catch. His other hand found my waist, drawing me closer until barely any space remained. I should kiss you right now. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. I've wanted to for weeks. Then why don't you? The words escaped before I could stop them. Because when I do, I need you to be absolutely certain it's what you want. Not gratitude for helping Tyler. Not obligation because I've paid for things. Just you, choosing me. Because you want this as much as I do. His hands framed my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones, while his eyes searched mine for answers to questions he hadn't asked aloud. I could feel his breath, smell the wine and something else uniquely him, every nerve in my body screaming to close the final distance. Instead, he stepped back, releasing me with visible effort. Ask me again when you're sure. When there's no doubt in your mind. The loss of his warmth left me unsteady. I wanted to argue, to tell him I was sure right now. But part of me recognized the wisdom in his restraint. Whatever this was between us, it deserved to be built on certainty rather than moment's impulse. I left him on the terrace and checked on Tyler, who slept peacefully in the guest room. When I returned, Franco stood at the windows with his phone pressed to his ear, his posture rigid with tension. When did this start? He listened intently, his free hand curling into a fist. Anonymous tips. Of course. How detailed are we talking? More listening. No, don't try to handle this alone. I'll have Joseph contact you first thing tomorrow. We need a full legal team assembled by Monday. He ended the call and stood motionless for several seconds before acknowledging my presence. What's wrong? That was my attorney, Lauren Mitchell. The FBI has initiated a formal investigation into my business operations. Money laundering, tax evasion, racketeering. Based on anonymous tips that included internal financial records someone shouldn't have access to. The implications settled over me like ice water. Someone's setting you up. Someone's declaring war. Franco's voice was calm, but anger simmered beneath the surface, and they were smart about it. The discrepancies they've planted are subtle, believable. This isn't going to disappear with a few phone calls. I thought about the surveillance, the careful distance Franco maintained from anything illegal around me and Tyler, the way he'd built walls between his legitimate businesses and whatever else he did. Someone had studied him carefully, found the exact pressure point to exploit. What happens now? Now I fight. Legally, through channels the right way. He turned to face me, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. But this is exactly what I was afraid of. My world touching yours, bringing danger you didn't ask for. We are not in danger from an FBI investigation. You're not. But you're associated with me, and that association will be scrutinized. Your finances, your background, Everywhere you go, everyone you talk to, they'll turn your life inside out looking for leverage. He moved closer, his expression serious. I can end this right now. Stop seeing you and Tyler. Remove myself from your lives completely. You be clear of whatever's coming. The offer should have tempted me. Should have been the escape I needed from complications I'd never wanted. Instead, it felt like losing something I'd only just begun to recognize as essential. Is that what you want? No. But what I want doesn't matter if it puts you and Tyler at risk. I closed the distance between us, reaching up to touch his face the way he'd touched mine minutes earlier. Then let me decide what risks I'm willing to take. You don't get to make that choice for me. His eyes searched mine, looking for certainty he'd demanded I have. This could get ugly, Samantha. Really ugly. I've survived ugly before. I'm still standing. I let my hand drop. But I need you to promise me something. You fight this the right way, like you said. No shortcuts, no violence, no reverting to whoever you used to be. Because that's the man I won't accept around my son. Franco nodded slowly. I promise. No matter what happens, I won't become that person again. It felt like sealing an agreement neither of us fully understood yet, but one that would define everything that came after. 2 weeks after the FBI investigation began, Franco's world started crumbling in slow motion. I didn't know this at the time. He'd become expert at compartmentalizing, showing up for our scheduled meetings with Tyler as if nothing had changed. Tuesday afternoons at the park, Saturday mornings at various museums. Always patient, always present, never letting the weight he carried show. I should have noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way he checked his phone more frequently, the dark circles under his eyes that no amount of sleep could erase. But I was too focused on Tyler's progress, on the way my son had started attempting single words during therapy, to see the storm gathering around the man who'd become central to both our lives. The first crack appeared when Franco canceled our Tuesday meeting. A text message, brief and apologetic. Business emergency. We'll reschedule soon. Sorry. Tyler spent that afternoon confused and agitated, checking the window every 10 minutes as if Franco might still appear. I tried distracting him with the chess set, but he pushed it away, retreating to his room with his stuffed elephant. Thursday brought another cancellation. This time, no explanation at all. Just, can't make Saturday. Talk soon. Something was wrong. Franco had never missed a meeting without detailed explanation, had never been dismissive or vague. I considered calling him, demanding answers, but pride kept my phone in my pocket. If he wanted distance, I'd give it to him. Friday evening, I worked the dinner shift at Marcello's. The restaurant was packed, every table full, the kitchen running behind on orders. I was refilling water glasses at table 8 when I heard his name from the bar television. Federal investigation into alleged organized crime figure Franco Ricchetti has expanded to include multiple business holdings across Manhattan. Sources close to the investigation suggest evidence of systematic money laundering through legitimate real estate ventures and restaurant chains. My hand froze, water pitcher suspended in midair. The screen showed Franco's photo, a professional headshot that made him look cold and dangerous. Nothing like the man who sat on park benches teaching chess to autistic children. The investigation, initiated by anonymous tips containing detailed financial records, has already resulted in the freezing of several accounts and the suspension of business operations pending federal audit. The reporter continued, but I couldn't process the words over the rushing sound in my ears. Franco had known this was coming. Had known for 2 weeks while pretending everything was fine, while showing up to play with Tyler as if his entire life wasn't being dismantled by federal investigators. He'd lied to me, not directly, but through omission, which felt worse somehow. I finished my shift on autopilot, serving meals and clearing plates while my mind spun through implications. The investigation, the money he'd spent on Tyler's therapy, the foundation, the surveillance he'd placed on us. How much of it was connected to whatever illegal activities he'd built his empire on? Rita found me in the walk-in freezer an hour before closing, supposedly checking inventory, but really just standing in the cold trying to numb the hurt spreading through my chest. You saw the news. It wasn't a question. Rita always knew everything. He didn't tell me. Knew for weeks and didn't say a word. Maybe he was trying to protect you. Keep you separate from the mess. I don't need protection. I need honesty. I slammed a clipboard onto the shelf harder than necessary. I told him that was my condition for accepting any of this, and he agreed. Then maybe you should tell him how you feel instead of hiding in a freezer. Rita was right, but confronting Franco required courage I wasn't sure I possessed. What if he pushed me away completely? What if this investigation meant he couldn't be part of Tyler's life anymore? My son had finally connected with someone, had started showing affection and trust to another human being, and losing that might set his progress back months. But living with deception wasn't an option either. I'd built my life on being Tyler's advocate, on demanding transparency from doctors and therapists and school administrators. I couldn't accept less from Franco just because the stakes felt higher. I left work at 11, took the subway to Tyler's babysitter Patricia's apartment to pick him up. He was already asleep, exhausted from a full day of activities. Patricia helped me get him into a cab without waking him, his small body warm and heavy against my shoulder. The cab driver asked for an address. I gave him Franco's building on Central Park West without letting myself overthink the decision. The doorman recognized me from our dinner 2 weeks ago. "Good evening, Mrs. Cooper. Shall I call up to Mr. Ricchetti?" "Please." I waited in the lobby, Tyler's weight grounding me while my heart hammered against my ribs. The doorman spoke quietly into his phone, then nodded. "He says to send you up." The elevator ride felt longer this time, Tyler growing heavier with each passing floor. When the doors opened, Franco stood waiting in his doorway, still dressed in a suit despite the late hour, his expression carefully neutral. "Samantha, I wasn't expecting you." "I know." I walked past him into the penthouse, moving directly to the guest room where I laid Tyler on the bed, covering him with the weighted blanket Franco kept there. My son didn't stir, secure in sleep. When I returned to the living room, Franco stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city lights. His reflection in the glass showed exhaustion I'd never seen before, defeat pulling at his features. I saw the news. I kept my voice level, refusing to let emotion derail what I needed to say. The investigation, the frozen accounts, all of it. And I realized you've known for 2 weeks while pretending everything was normal. I was trying to keep you out of it. By lying to me? The words came out sharper than intended. By breaking the one condition I gave you for letting you into our lives? Franco turned to face me, and the rawness in his expression stole my breath. I wasn't lying. I was protecting you from information that could make you legally complicit. The less you knew, the safer you were. That's not your decision to make. I moved closer, forcing him to maintain eye contact. I'm not a child who needs shielding from difficult truths. I'm a grown woman who survived widowhood, poverty, and raising a disabled child alone. I can handle reality, Franco. What I can't handle is being treated like I'm too fragile for honesty. You're right. He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the perfect styling. I was wrong to keep this from you. He stopped, jaw clenching. I was terrified of losing you and Tyler. Terrified that if you knew how bad this was, you'd disappear before I could fix it. How bad is it? Franco walked to the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, drained half the glass before answering. Multiple federal agencies are investigating every business I own. They've frozen 12 accounts totaling $8 million. 3 of my legitimate restaurants have been shut down pending audit. Someone planted evidence of money laundering in my financial records, subtle discrepancies that look real to forensic accountants. Who did this? I have suspicions, but no proof. Brandon Wells has the connections and the motivation. He's friends with politicians who can pressure federal agencies, has business ties to organizations that could provide the kind of detailed intelligence needed to set this up. Franco finished his drink, set the glass down with deliberate control. He's destroying me systematically, legally in ways I can't fight with the methods I used to rely on. What methods? The question hung between us, loaded with implications we both understood. Franco's dark eyes held mine, and I saw the internal war playing across his features. Truth or comfortable fiction? Safety or honesty? Violence, intimidation, making problems disappear permanently. His voice was flat, factual. That's who I was for most of my adult life. Someone who solved conflicts by being more dangerous than anyone who challenged me. I should have been shocked, horrified. But I'd known, somewhere deep down, Exactly who Franco Ricchetti was before he'd decided to change. The fact that he was admitting it now, trusting me with the darkest parts of himself, mattered more than the confession itself. And now I'm trying to be someone different. Someone who deserves to be around your son. Someone who fights battles through lawyers and legal channels, even when every instinct screams to handle this the old way. He moved closer, stopping just outside my personal space. But I'm failing, Samantha. My organization is fracturing. People who respected me think I'm weak now. The investigation is costing me allies, money, reputation. And I can't make it stop without becoming the person I swore I wouldn't be anymore. The vulnerability in his admission cracked something open in my chest. This wasn't the controlled, confident man who'd stood up to Brandon Wells in a restaurant hallway. This was someone barely holding together, caught between the person he'd been and the person he wanted to become. I'm going to stay. The words came out steady, certain, but only if you promise me complete honesty from this point forward. Every development in this investigation, every threat, every decision that affects us. You don't get to decide what I can handle anymore. That's my choice, not yours. Relief flooded Franco's face so intensely it was almost painful to witness. I promise. No more secrets. No more protection through ignorance. You'll know everything. Good. I started to turn away, then stopped. And Franco? I'm staying not because I think you're perfect or redeemed or any of that romantic nonsense. I'm staying because Tyler has made more progress with you in 2 months than he made in the previous year. Because you've shown him patience and acceptance that most people can't manage. Whatever you were before doesn't matter as much as who you're trying to be now. He closed the distance between us, his hand cupping my face with the same gentle reverence he'd shown at dinner 2 weeks ago. What if trying isn't sufficient? What if I lose everything? Then you'll rebuild. People do it every day. I let myself lean into his touch briefly before stepping back. But you have to fight this the right way, Franco. No shortcuts, no violence, no matter how tempting. Because the second you go back to being that person, I'm gone. I understand. A knock on the door interrupted whatever else might have been said. Franco tensed immediately, his entire demeanor shifting to something harder, more alert. He checked the security screen beside the door, then relaxed fractionally. It's Joseph, my consigliere. The man who entered was silver-haired, late 50s, with the kind of presence that suggested he'd seen and survived things most people couldn't imagine. His eyes swept the room, cataloging my presence with professional assessment before focusing on Franco. We need to talk. Now. Joseph's voice carried urgency that made my stomach clench. The situation has escalated. Samantha should hear this. Franco gestured for me to stay. No more secrets, remember? Joseph's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. Wells leaked information to 3 major news networks. By tomorrow morning, your name will be connected to every unsolved organized crime case in the past decade. True or not, the coverage will be devastating. Let him. We'll issue statements through Lauren, correct the record where we can. That's not all. Joseph pulled out his phone, showing a document that meant nothing to me, but clearly meant everything to Franco based on his expression. He's been meeting with representatives from the Yakuza Yamaguchi. They've been trying to expand operations in New York for years. Wells is offering them information about your territory, your operations, your weaknesses, in exchange for their help destroying you completely. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Franco's hands curled into fists at his sides, his jaw so tight I could see muscle jumping beneath his skin. When did you confirm this? 3 hours ago. I've had people watching Wells since the investigation started. Joseph pocketed his phone, his expression grim. Franco, this has gone beyond business competition. Wells has made this personal, and he's brought in people who won't stop at legal destruction. The Yakuza doesn't play by federal rules. Neither do we. The words came out cold, emotionless. The man I'd glimpsed in the restaurant hallway. The one who'd made Brandon Wells flee with just his name. Exactly. Joseph leaned forward, his voice dropping. One word from you, and Wells disappears. Quietly, cleanly, in a way that can never be traced back to us. The investigation loses its primary source. The Yakuza loses their inside connection. Everything stops. Silence filled the penthouse, heavy with the weight of the decision being offered. I watched Franco's face, saw the war being waged behind his dark eyes. Every muscle in his body radiated tension, violence barely contained beneath expensive clothes and civilized veneer. This was the moment everything hinged on. The choice between who he'd been and who he wanted to become. Easy solution versus difficult principle. Franco's gaze found mine across the room, and something passed between us. A question, a plea, an acknowledgement of what he was giving up by choosing the harder path. No, his voice was rough but definite. We don't touch wells. We fight this through legal channels, through evidence and attorneys in the system. Joseph's expression flickered with something that might have been disappointment or respect. That could take years. Could cost you everything you've built. Then it costs me everything. Franco's posture remained rigid, but certainty filled his words. I'm not going back to solving problems with body counts. Not anymore. Joseph studied his boss for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Your call. I'll inform the others that Wells remains off limits. After Joseph left, Franco stood motionless at the windows, staring out at the city that was slowly turning against him. I moved to stand beside him, our reflections side by side in the glass. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. His voice was barely a whisper. Every instinct I have screamed to take Joseph's offer, but you didn't. That's what matters. Is it? What if choosing principle over pragmatism destroys everything? I reached for his hand, lacing our fingers together. Then we figure out what comes next. Together. The crisis exploded on a Wednesday morning in a warehouse Franco hadn't used for legitimate meetings in over 3 years. He'd called the gathering himself, knowing what it meant to summon his captains to this particular location. It was the kind of place where decisions were made in the old days, back when disagreements ended with bodies in the Hudson. 5 men sat around the steel table, representing the core of his organization. Joseph stood at Franco's right shoulder, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The tension in the room was thick as smoke. Everyone understanding this meeting would determine whether the empire Franco had built would survive or fracture. You all know why we're here. Franco remained standing, refusing to sit. In the hierarchy they'd built together, sitting suggested equality. Standing reminded them who held final authority. The investigation is escalating. Wells has connections we underestimated. The Yakuza Yamaguchi is circling, looking for weakness. Some of you have expressed concerns about how I'm handling this. Roberto Vitale spoke first, his thick accent more pronounced when angry. Concerns? Franco, we're bleeding money while you play lawyer. 3 properties seized, 12 accounts frozen, suppliers refusing to work with us because the feds are watching. This isn't concern. It's survival. What would you have me do differently? Franco's voice remained level, but Joseph shifted slightly, recognizing the dangerous calm. What you've always done. Another captain, Fernando Ferraro, leaned forward. We know who's behind this. Wells gave the feds everything they have. He's coordinating with the Yakuza. One call from you, he disappears. Investigation loses its primary source. Everything falls apart, and brings twice the heat down on us. Joseph finally spoke, his tone clipped. You think federal agents won't notice their star witness vanishing? They'll tear this organization apart looking for evidence. Let them look, Roberto shot back. They've been looking for 20 years and haven't found anything that sticks. We know how to handle investigations. What we don't know how to handle is a boss who's forgotten how this world works. The accusation hung in the air, and Franco felt every pair of eyes on him, measuring his response. This was the moment. The choice between the man he'd been and the man he was trying to become. I haven't forgotten anything. Franco's hands pressed flat against the table, his body language deliberately controlled. I remember exactly how this world works. I also remember what it costs. Bodies pile up, heat increases. Eventually someone flips or gets caught, and the whole structure collapses. That's the pattern, repeated across every organization that thought violence solved problems. Violence built this organization, Fernando pointed out, and violence will destroy it if we're not careful. Franco straightened. I'm proposing a different approach. We fight Wells through legal channels, expose his connections to the Yakuza, flip the narrative back on him, make him the criminal, not us. That takes years. A younger captain named Diego spoke up. "We don't have years. People are already jumping ship. Our protection rackets are falling apart because the cops smell blood in the water. Our distribution networks are compromised because suppliers don't trust us anymore. Then we rebuild differently." Franco's jaw tightened. "We transition out of the illegal operations completely. Focus on the legitimate businesses. Go clean enough that investigations can't touch us." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Roberto laughed, a bitter sound without humor. "You're serious? You actually think we can just walk away from decades of work and become legitimate businessmen? I think the alternative is prison or death, and I'd prefer neither. The alternative is doing what we've always done." Roberto stood, his chair scraping loudly against concrete. "Which is why I'm asking directly. Are you refusing to authorize action against Wells?" Franco met his eyes without flinching. "I am. Because of her. It wasn't a question. The waitress and her kid. They've gotten into your head. Made you soft." Joseph moved before Franco could respond, stepping between them. "Watch yourself, Roberto." "Why?" "It's true and everyone here knows it." Roberto gestured around the table. 6 weeks ago, Franco would have handled Wells without a second thought. Now he's spending afternoons in parks teaching some special needs kid how to play chess while our world burns down around us. Franco's control slipped fractionally, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Careful." "Or what? You'll prove me wrong by doing something decisive?" Roberto's face flushed with frustration. "We followed you because you were strong. Because you made hard calls without hesitation. Now you hesitate about everything, and it's killing us." 2 other captains nodded agreement, and Franco registered the split happening in real time. The organization was fracturing along the fault line of loyalty versus pragmatism. "I'm changing how we operate," Franco said slowly, forcing his temper under control. "Not because I'm weak, but because the world has changed. The old methods don't work anymore. Too much surveillance, too much cooperation between agencies, too many ways to get caught. We adapt or we die. We're dying anyway," Fernando added. "Just slower, while you figure out how to be some kind of reformed criminal. Then leave." The words came out cold, final. "Anyone who can't follow this direction, walk away now. No hard feelings, no consequences. Take whatever legitimate ventures you've built under this organization, and go." The offer shocked them. In their world, leaving wasn't usually an option that ended well. "You're serious," Diego said quietly. "Completely. I'd rather lose half this organization than compromise the path I've chosen." Franco's gaze moved from face to face. "But if you stay, you follow my lead. No freelancing, no going around me to handle Wells yourself, no reverting to old methods. Clear?" Roberto stood for a long moment, calculation running behind his eyes. Then he shook his head. "I can't do this, Franco. I can't watch everything we built crumble because you grew a conscience. I'm out." He walked toward the exit, and Franco felt something crack in his chest. Roberto had been with him since the beginning, had helped build this empire from nothing. Watching him leave felt like losing a limb. Fernando hesitated, then followed. 2 of the 5 captains, gone in seconds. The 3 remaining exchanged glances. Diego spoke first. "I'll stay. Don't agree with all of it, but I trust your judgment more than I trust anyone else's." The other 2 nodded similar agreements, but the doubt in their expressions was clear. Franco had bought their loyalty for now, but it was conditional, fragile. After the meeting ended, Joseph waited until they were alone before speaking. "You just lost 40% of your operational capacity. I know. Roberto and Fernando control the entire West Side distribution. They'll probably take their crews with them, which means you're down closer to 50%. I know that too." Franco pulled out his phone, staring at a text from Samantha, asking if he could make Saturday's meeting with Tyler. "But I made the right call." "Did you?" Joseph's question wasn't challenging, just genuine curiosity. "Because from where I'm standing, you chose principle over survival. That's noble, but nobility doesn't pay bills or keep the feds off our backs. What would you have me do? Kill Wells and prove every accusation against me true? Become the monster they think I am, so Tyler can grow up knowing his friend is a murderer?" Joseph was quiet for a moment. "I've known you since you were 20 years old, Franco. I watched you take over from your father, watched you build this into something bigger than anyone imagined. And in all those years, I've never seen you care about being someone's friend. Not really. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I should have cared sooner. Maybe. Joseph moved toward the door. But caring now might cost you everything, including the ability to protect that woman and her son if things get worse. The words landed like physical blows. Because Joseph was right. Franco had built protection through power and fear. Strip those away, and what did he have left to shield Samantha and Tyler from the storm he'd pulled them into? While Franco dealt with his collapsing organization, I sat in my therapist's office struggling to articulate the war happening inside my chest. Dr. Harris waited patiently, giving me space to find words for feelings I barely understood myself. I think I'm falling in love with him. The admission felt both terrifying and inevitable, which is completely insane given everything happening. Why is it insane? Because he's under federal investigation. Because he's admitted to violence in his past. Because people in his world are leaving him because they think I've made him weak. I twisted my hands together, unable to meet her eyes. How can I be falling for someone whose life is actively falling apart because of choices I'm partially responsible for? Are you responsible for his choices? He says Tyler and I are part of why he's choosing this path. That we've shown him something worth being better for. That's not the same as being responsible, Dr. Harris pointed out gently. He's making decisions based on his own values and who he wants to become. You're an influence, yes, but not the cause. It feels like I am. I finally looked up. Every time he chooses the harder path, the one that costs him more, I see him look at me like he's checking if it's worth it. Like I'm the reason he's not taking the easy, violent solution everyone else wants. And how does that make you feel? Terrified, honored, guilty, all of it at once. I exhaled shakily. What if he loses everything trying to be someone worthy of being around Tyler? What if this path destroys him and I'm the reason? Let me ask you something. Dr. Harris leaned forward slightly. If Franco had chosen the other path, if he'd handled the situation the way his organization wanted, with violence and intimidation, would you still be here? Would you still be considering a relationship with him? No. The answer was immediate, certain. I told him that was my line. Any violence, any return to who he used to be, and I'm gone. So your presence in his life isn't making him weak. It's making him choose between being strong in the way he always has been versus being strong in a completely different way. The fact that he's choosing the second option tells you something important about his character. I sat with that, turning it over in my mind. That he's capable of change. That he wants to change. That he values what you and Tyler represent more than he values the easy path. She paused. The question you need to answer is whether you can handle being part of that journey, knowing it might not end well, knowing he might lose everything and need to rebuild from nothing. I've been broke before. I know how to survive it. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about watching someone you care about struggle, possibly fail, while knowing your presence is part of what's making it harder for him. The weight of that settled over me. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. Then maybe that's what you need to figure out before this goes any further. 2 nights later, I found myself at Franco's penthouse again. Though I couldn't have explained what drove me there, Tyler was with Patricia for the evening, giving me rare freedom. I could have gone anywhere, done anything. Instead, I stood in Franco's living room watching him pour wine with hands that shook slightly. Bad day? I asked. Bad week. Bad month, really. He handed me a glass, his fingers brushing mine briefly. Roberto and Fernando took their cruise, just like Joseph predicted. I'm down to about 40% operational capacity. The investigation is getting more aggressive. Wells leaked more information to the press connecting me to cases I had nothing to do with. And my attorney thinks the FBI is building toward formal charges within 60 days. I'm sorry. Don't be. He took a long drink. This is what choosing differently looks like. It's not pretty or easy or victorious. It's just hard. I moved to stand beside him at the windows overlooking the park. Do you regret it? Every single day. He turned to look at me, and the rawness in his expression stole my breath. But I'd make the same choice again because the alternative is losing the only thing that's made me feel human in 17 years. Tyler. You. The word hung between us. Both of you. but mostly you. Tyler reminds me what innocence looks like, what's worth protecting. But you, Samantha, you make me want to be someone who deserves protecting something that pure. My heart hammered against my ribs. Franco, I know. Bad timing. My world's collapsing. I have nothing to offer you except complications and danger. But I need you to know, before this gets worse, that you're the reason I'm fighting this way. Not because you forced me to, but because you showed me there was another option. I set down my wine glass with deliberate care, then reached up to cup his face between my hands. Ask me. Ask you what? What you said you would ask when I was certain, when there was no doubt. I held his gaze. Ask me now. Understanding dawned in his dark eyes, followed by something like fear. Are you certain? Because once I do this, once we cross this line, there's no going back to before. I've been certain for weeks. I'm just tired of waiting for the perfect moment when everything's resolved. Maybe this is the perfect moment. Maybe choosing each other in the middle of chaos is more real than choosing each other when everything's easy. Franco's hands came up to cover mine, holding them against his face. Can I kiss you? Yes. He closed the distance slowly, giving me every chance to change my mind. When his lips finally met mine, it was gentle, reverent. Nothing like the passionate explosion I'd imagined. It was a question and an answer, a promise and a plea. Every complicated emotion between us distilled into a single perfect moment of connection. When we finally pulled apart, Franco rested his forehead against mine, breathing unsteady. I'm going to fight for this. For us. Whatever it takes, I'll find a way through that doesn't require me to become someone you can't accept. I know you will. I believed it completely, despite every rational reason not to. And I'll be right here while you do. Outside, the city glittered with possibility and danger in equal measure. Somewhere in those buildings, Brandon Wells plotted his next move. Federal agents built their case. Yakuza representatives negotiated alliances. The storm was still coming, still gathering strength. But for one moment, standing in Franco's arms with the taste of him still on my lips, I let myself believe we'd find a way to weather it together. The decision came to Franco in the quiet hours of a Thursday morning, sitting in his attorney's office while rain streaked down the floor-to-ceiling windows. Lauren Mitchell had laid out 3 cardboard boxes worth of evidence on her conference table, each folder representing another thread the FBI was pulling. They're building toward RICO charges, Lauren said, tapping a thick file. Racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. They have financial records someone fed them, witness statements from people you've never met, surveillance photos going back 18 months. This isn't a fishing expedition anymore, Franco. They're preparing for prosecution. How long do I have? Realistically, 30 to 60 days before formal charges. Maybe less if they think you're a flight risk. She poured coffee from a carafe, her hands steady despite delivering news that would destroy most people. We can fight this. I have a good team. We'll challenge every piece of evidence, tie them up in motions for years. But I need you to be honest with me about what they might find if they keep digging. Franco thought about the warehouse meetings, the cash transactions, the agreements made in back rooms with men whose names never appeared on official documents. 20 years of careful insulation, layers between himself and anything prosecutable. But no system was perfect, and Wells had found the cracks. They'll find discrepancies, payments that don't quite match invoices, property transfers that look questionable under scrutiny. Nothing that definitively proves criminal activity, but suspicious patterns that fit their narrative. Can we explain those patterns? With enough legal creativity, probably. But it'll be expensive, time-consuming, and there's no guarantee we win. He stood, moving to the window. Manhattan stretched below, indifferent to his crisis. What if there was another option? Lauren's expression shifted, professional curiosity replacing the careful neutrality she'd maintained. What kind of option? The kind where I give them something bigger than me. Something valuable to their investigation that makes my small-time operations look irrelevant. You're talking about cooperation. She set down her coffee carefully. Franco, that's a massive step. Once you go down that road, there's no coming back. Your organization will fracture completely. People who've been loyal for decades will see it as betrayal. My organization is already fracturing. I've lost 2 captains and their entire crews. The people who stayed are 1 bad week away from jumping ship." He turned to face her. "What I'm asking is this. If I had intelligence about a larger criminal enterprise, one that's been trying to expand into U.S. territory, would federal prosecutors be interested in a deal?" Lauren leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled beneath her chin. "Depends on the intelligence. Would need to be verified, substantial, and lead to actual prosecutions. But yes, if the information was valuable like that, DOJ might be willing to negotiate. Archive the investigation against you, seize assets, supervision going forward, but no prison time. The Yakuza Yamaguchi has been trying to establish operations in New York for 5 years. I have documentation of their money laundering routes, names of American officials receiving bribes, details of human trafficking operations they're running through West Coast ports." Franco pulled out his phone, scrolling to encrypted files he'd been collecting as insurance for years. "This isn't speculation or hearsay. It's documented evidence that could dismantle their entire North American network." Lauren's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise she allowed. "How did you obtain this information?" "By being more paranoid than my competitors. Every time the Yakuza made a move in territory adjacent to mine, I had people documenting it. I never planned to use it for cooperation. But I also never planned to be backed into a corner by Brandon Wells. This is a different level, Franco. You're talking about bringing down an international criminal organization. The Yakuza doesn't forgive that kind of thing. Neither does the FBI forgive organized crime in their backyard. I'd rather take my chances with one than the other." He pocketed his phone. "Set up a meeting, quietly. I want to talk to whoever's running this investigation." Lauren spent 3 days making arrangements, using back channels and trusted intermediaries to ensure the meeting wouldn't leak. When it finally happened, it was in a nondescript office building in Lower Manhattan, the kind of place where dozens of businesses operated anonymously. Special Agent Daniel Foster looked younger than Franco expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that cataloged everything without seeming to. He sat across from Franco and Lauren at a plain conference table, 2 other agents flanking him silently. "Mr. Ricchetti, I'll admit, when your attorney requested this meeting, I was skeptical about what you could possibly offer that would interest us. Then let me make it simple." Franco slid a USB drive across the table. "That contains financial records, communication intercepts, and operational details of the Yakuza Yamaguchi's North American network. Specifically, their money laundering operation through cryptocurrency exchanges, their human trafficking routes from Asia through Seattle, and the names of 15 U.S. officials, including 2 federal judges, who've accepted bribes in exchange for interference." Foster picked up the drive, turning it over in his hands without inserting it into anything. "This is allegedly from the Yamaguchi organization, verified and cross-referenced. 5 years of intelligence gathering. Routes, methods, contact information, financial accounts, everything you'd need to build prosecutions that would cripple their operations for the next decade. And you're offering this because? Because you're investigating me for crimes that, in the grand scheme, are relatively minor compared to international human trafficking and judicial corruption. Because I'm trying to transition out of illegal operations anyway, and this gives me leverage to do it on better terms. And because Brandon Wells has allied himself with the Yamaguchi to destroy me, which makes them my problem as much as yours." Foster exchanged glances with his colleagues, silent communication passing between them. "Even if this information is legitimate, and we'd need to verify every detail, what exactly are you proposing?" Lauren spoke up, her voice crisp and professional. "My client is willing to provide this intelligence and cooperate fully with your investigation into the Yamaguchi network. In exchange, we're requesting that the current investigation into Mr. Ricchetti be archived, his assets released from seizure, and a supervised transition period where he winds down any remaining questionable operations under federal oversight." "No prison time," Foster said flatly, "for someone we believe has run an organized criminal enterprise for over a decade. For someone who's providing you with evidence that will lead to dozens of prosecutions more significant than anything you could build against him," Lauren countered. "The cost-benefit analysis here is clear, Agent Foster. You can spend years trying to convict my client on charges that might not stick, or you can use what he's offering to take down an international organization that's been operating with impunity on U.S. soil. Foster set the drive down, folding his hands on the table. I'll need to verify the contents before we discuss any deal. If this is what you claim, I'll bring it to my superiors and the DOJ. But understand something, Mr. Ricchetti. If you're cooperating with us, you're burning every bridge you have in the criminal world. People who've worked with you for years will see this as the ultimate betrayal. You'll need protection, probably relocation, definitely a complete restructuring of your life. I understand. Do you? Foster leaned forward. Because in my experience, men like you don't really grasp what cooperation means until you're watching everything you built crumble around you. Your organization will fracture, your reputation will be destroyed, former associates will become enemies. This isn't a reset button. It's scorched earth. Franco thought of Tyler's small hand in his during museum visits, of Samantha's steady gaze when she'd told him she'd stay through whatever came. I'm aware of the costs. I'm choosing to pay them anyway. Foster studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. We'll be in touch within 72 hours. The verification process took 6 days. Franco spent them in a state of suspended animation, meeting with Tyler and Samantha as if nothing had changed while his entire future hung in federal hands. He didn't tell them about the meeting with Foster, couldn't bring himself to voice the possibility until it was real. On the 6th day, Lauren called. They want the deal. DOJ approved it. You provide full cooperation, testify if needed, turn over all documentation. In exchange, investigation archived, assets released minus a $2 million civil forfeiture, and 3 years of supervised probation, where you report quarterly on business operations. Franco closed his eyes, relief and dread washing over him in equal measure. When do they want to start? Tomorrow. They're moving fast, want to hit the Yamaguchi network before anyone realizes where the intelligence came from. She paused. Franco, this is going to get ugly. When word spreads that you cooperated with feds, the fallout will be immediate and severe. I need you prepared for that. I'm prepared. He wasn't. Not really. But there was no going back now. The FBI moved with military precision once the deal was formalized. Within 48 hours, coordinated raids hit Yakuza operations across 5 cities. Arrests, asset seizures, frozen accounts. The news coverage was relentless, detailing the scope of the organization's criminal network and praising the intelligence that had made the takedown possible. Brandon Wells's name appeared in the 4th wave of arrests, his connection to the Yakuza exposed through financial records and communication intercepts. The man who'd set out to destroy Franco found himself facing federal charges for conspiracy, money laundering, and providing material support to a criminal organization. Franco watched the news coverage from his penthouse, Joseph standing silently beside him. Roberto called, Joseph said finally, along with about 20 others from the organization. They know it was you who provided the intelligence. They know you cooperated. What did you tell them? That you made a strategic decision to ensure long-term survival. Most of them didn't want to hear it. Roberto specifically said you've violated every code we operate under, and that there will be consequences. Let them try. Franco's voice was flat, exhausted. I'm done with those codes. I'm done with that world. They won't make it easy. You've burned bridges with everyone who operated under those old rules. And the Yakuza, if any of them avoid prosecution, they'll have long memories. I'll deal with it. Franco turned from the window. What about you? You staying or following Roberto out the door? Joseph was quiet for a moment. I've known you since you were 20 years old. I watched you take over from your father, build this organization from the ground up. And in all those years, I've never seen you care about being anything other than successful. Until now. That didn't answer my question. I'm staying. Because whoever you're becoming is more interesting than who you were. Joseph moved toward the door. But I hope she's worth it, Franco. That woman and her son. Because you just traded an empire for the chance to be part of their lives. She is. They both are. After Joseph left, Franco stood alone in his penthouse, surrounded by the trappings of wealth that suddenly felt meaningless. He'd won, in the most technical sense. The investigation was over. Wells was facing justice. The Yakuza network was dismantled. But the cost was everything he'd spent 2 decades building. His organization would dissolve completely now, captains taking their operations independent or joining other groups. His reputation in the criminal world was destroyed permanently, and somewhere out there, people who'd once been loyal now considered him a traitor worth eliminating. He pulled out his phone, stared at Samantha's contact. She deserved to know what he'd done, what was coming, but the words wouldn't form. Fear of her reaction paralyzing him. A knock on his door pulled him from the spiral. When he opened it, Samantha stood there with Tyler asleep on her shoulder, her expression determined. "I saw the news," she said simply. "Can we come in?" Franco stepped aside, letting them enter. Samantha laid Tyler on the couch, covering him with the blanket Franco kept there, then turned to face him. "Tell me what you did." So he did. Everything. From the meeting with Foster, to the deal, to the verification, to the raids. He left nothing out, watching her face for signs of judgment or fear or disgust. When he finished, Samantha was quiet for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding tight. "You kept your promise," she whispered against his chest. "No violence, no shortcuts. The hard way. The hard way cost me everything. Not everything." She pulled back, meeting his eyes. "You still have us. If you want us." Franco's hands came up to frame her face, thumbs brushing away tears he hadn't realized were falling down his own cheeks. "That's all I want. All I've ever wanted since I met you both." She kissed him then, fierce and claiming, a promise sealed without words. When they finally separated, Tyler was watching from the couch, his blue eyes serious and evaluating. Franco knelt beside him. "Hey, buddy. You okay?" Tyler studied him for a moment, then reached out and touched Franco's face gently, deliberately, a gesture of comfort, of understanding beyond words. "He knows," Samantha said softly. "Somehow, he always knows." Franco gathered Tyler into his arms, holding the child who'd changed everything, and let himself believe that maybe trading an empire for this, for genuine connection, for love, for the possibility of redemption, had been the best decision he'd ever made, even if it meant facing consequences he couldn't yet imagine. 8 months had passed since Franco's world had imploded and rebuilt itself into something unrecognizable. The penthouse overlooking Central Park remained his, but most of the other properties had been sold or seized. The empire he'd spent 2 decades constructing had dissolved like morning fog, leaving behind only the legitimate businesses and a handful of investments that could survive federal scrutiny. Franco sat in what used to be his office at the Foundation headquarters, reviewing grant applications with the same focus he'd once applied to territorial negotiations. The Luca R. Foundation had expanded significantly, now operating in 3 states with a staff of 12. It was the part of his legacy he'd kept, the piece that meant something beyond accumulation of power and money. "You have a call on line 2, his assistant said through the intercom. "Joseph Bellini." Franco picked up, leaning back in his chair. "Joseph. Been a while." 3 months, Joseph confirmed. "I've been keeping my distance, letting the dust settle. But I thought you'd want to know. Roberto was arrested last week. Money laundering charges. Apparently he tried running the old operations without your connections, got sloppy, and the feds noticed. I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" Joseph's tone was neutral, curious rather than accusatory. "He walked away from you, called you a traitor. Last time we spoke, he said he hoped you ended up in a shallow grave somewhere. Doesn't mean I wanted him in prison." Franco rubbed his eyes, exhaustion from late nights reviewing financial statements catching up to him. "How are the others?" "Scattered. Some went independent, some joined other organizations. Diego is running a security consulting firm, completely legitimate as far as I can tell. Fernando disappeared. Rumor is he's in South America somewhere." Joseph paused. "The organization you built doesn't exist anymore, Franco. Whatever pieces remained after you cooperated with the feds, they've fragmented into nothing. Good. That was the point. Was it worth it?" The question held no judgment, just genuine curiosity from someone who'd known him for 15 years. Trading everything for a shot at legitimacy? Franco thought about Tyler's 7th birthday party 3 weeks ago. 20 children from the therapy program, most on the autism spectrum, playing in a carefully organized environment that minimized sensory overload. Tyler had spoken 12 words that day, including Franco and cake and happy. The progress was slow, but undeniable, measured in tiny victories that meant everything. "Yes," he said simply. It was worth it. After Joseph hung up, Franco returned to the grant applications, approving funding for 3 families whose situations reminded him achingly of Samantha's struggle when he'd first met her. The foundation had helped 47 families in the past 8 months alone, providing therapy funding, respite care, and educational resources. His phone buzzed with a text from Samantha. "Tyler wants to know if you're coming to dinner. I told him you had work, but he's very insistent." Franco smiled, typing back quickly. "Tell him I'll be there in an hour. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself. He's been practicing something to show you." Samantha's apartment was still the same modest 2-bedroom in a neighborhood that would never be described as upscale. Franco had offered multiple times to help her relocate somewhere bigger, safer. But she'd refused each time with the same stubborn independence that had first attracted him. "I'm capable of providing for my son," she'd said the last time he'd suggested it. "And I need to maintain that capability, even if your life has gotten complicated. If something happens and you're not around, Tyler and I need to know we can survive on our own." She'd been right, of course. Franco's supervised probation meant quarterly reports to federal agents, random audits of his business dealings, and the constant possibility that one misstep could land him in prison despite the deal. Living independently from him wasn't just pride, it was practical survival. Tyler answered the door when Franco knocked, his small face lighting up with recognition and joy. "Franco." The word was clear, deliberate. One of the 27 words Tyler could now produce verbally. Each one was a triumph, celebrated by everyone in his support network. "Hey, buddy." Franco knelt down, accepting the enthusiastic hug Tyler offered. Physical affection had become easier for Tyler over the past months, though he was still selective about who received it. "Your mom says you have something to show me." Tyler nodded vigorously, grabbing Franco's hand and pulling him toward the living room. Samantha stood in the kitchen doorway, wearing jeans and a sweater that had seen better days, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with polish or presentation, and everything to do with the warmth in her eyes when she looked at her son. "He's been practicing all week," she said. "I have no idea if this will actually work, but he's determined." Tyler positioned Franco on the couch, then carefully retrieved the chess set they'd been using for months. But instead of setting up for a game, Tyler began moving pieces with deliberate purpose, speaking as he did. Pawn. Forward. 2. Franco's breath caught. Tyler was calling out chess moves, narrating his own actions in real time. The speech therapy, the intensive work, all of it culminating in this moment, where Tyler independently chose to combine his love of patterns with his developing verbal skills. "That's incredible, Ty." Franco kept his voice steady, despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "You're playing and talking at the same time. Knight. L-shape." Tyler moved the piece, then looked at Franco expectantly. They played for 20 minutes, Tyler narrating each move with increasing confidence. Some words were unclear, the articulation imperfect, but the intent was unmistakable. When Tyler finally declared "checkmate" in his small, proud voice, Franco pulled him into a hug that the boy accepted without resistance. Over dinner, Samantha filled Franco in on the details he'd missed during his busy week. Tyler's speech therapist was recommending reduction to twice-weekly sessions instead of 3 times, a sign of genuine progress. The occupational therapy was also scaling back as Tyler developed better sensory regulation. The intensive early intervention was paying off in ways they'd barely dared hope for 8 months ago. "I enrolled in classes," Samantha said casually while clearing plates. "Community college, business administration with a focus on nonprofit management." Franco stopped mid-movement. "That's wonderful. When did you decide that?" "About a month ago. I've been volunteering at the foundation, seeing how it operates, and I realized I could actually do this professionally, help families like mine navigate the system, advocate for services, make a difference." She met his eyes. "I'm still working part-time at Marcello's, but I want something more, something that matters beyond paying bills." "You'd be brilliant at it." Franco meant it completely. Samantha had a natural talent for cutting through bureaucratic nonsense and focusing on practical solutions. "If you ever want an internship at the foundation, the position is yours." "I'll earn it on my own merits, thanks." But she was smiling, softening the rejection. No nepotism or favors because we're together. Are we? Franco asked quietly. Together, I mean. Officially. Samantha set down the dish she was drying, considering the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. We see each other 4 times a week. You have a drawer in my dresser. Tyler calls you by name and gets upset when you're late. I haven't looked at another man in 8 months. So yes, I'd say we're together. But you won't let me help you financially. Won't move somewhere safer. Won't accept anything that looks like dependence. Because I can't build my life around someone else's resources, Franco. I learned that lesson when Anthony died and I had nothing to fall back on. She dried her hands on a towel, moving to stand in front of him. I care about you deeply. I might even love you, though I'm still working through what that means. But I need to know Tyler, and I can survive without you. Because your world is still dangerous in ways mine isn't. She was right, as usual. The supervised probation was stable for now. But Franco lived with the knowledge that federal agents were watching, that former associates held grudges, that the Yakuza didn't forgive cooperation even across international borders. Building a life with him meant accepting those risks, and Samantha was clear-eyed about what that required. I understand. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. But for the record, I definitely love you. Both of you. That's not something I'm working through. I'm completely certain. Samantha smiled against his chest, her arms coming up to circle his neck. Then I guess that's a good start. Later, after Tyler was asleep and they sat together on her worn couch, watching a movie neither was paying attention to, Samantha spoke into the comfortable silence. Joseph called me last week. Franco tensed. Why? To warn me. He said there are still people angry about your cooperation, that I should be careful, that Tyler and I might be vulnerable because of our relationship with you. She felt Franco start to pull away and held him tighter. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd panic and try to wrap us in layers of security that would suffocate us both. Samantha, if there's a credible threat, Joseph said it's mostly talk. Angry people venting, but no concrete plans or imminent danger. He's keeping ears to the ground and promised to tell me if that changes. She tilted her head to look at him. I'm not naive about the risks, but I'm also not going to live in fear of possibilities. We take reasonable precautions, stay aware, but we don't let it control our lives. Franco wanted to argue, to insist on armed security and safe houses and all the measures his protective instincts demanded. But he'd learned over the past 8 months that Samantha made her own decisions about acceptable risk, and trying to override that destroyed the trust between them faster than any external threat. Fine, but you tell me immediately if anything seems off, anything at all. Deal. 3 weeks later, Franco received notification that Brandon Wells had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy, money laundering, and providing material support to a criminal organization. The Yakuza Yamaguchi network in North America had been effectively dismantled, with over 60 arrests and hundreds of millions in seized assets. The news coverage praised the intelligence that had made the takedown possible, though Franco's name was carefully omitted from official statements. The deal with the FBI had included provisions protecting his identity as a cooperating witness, though anyone in the criminal world who cared to know had already figured it out. Joseph called that evening. Wells is done. 12 years, no possibility of parole before 8. He'll be an old man when he gets out. Good. Franco felt no satisfaction in Wells's downfall, just relief that the threat was neutralized. And the Yakuza? Broken in the US. They'll rebuild eventually, but it'll take years. You're probably safe from them, though I wouldn't recommend visiting Japan anytime soon. Joseph chuckled darkly. The irony is that Wells set out to destroy you and ended up destroying himself instead. If he'd just let that night at the restaurant go, none of this would have happened. Ego and revenge make people stupid. They certainly do. Joseph paused. For what it's worth, Franco, I think you made the right choice. Not the easy one, not the one most of us would have made, but the right one. The man you're becoming is better than the man you were. Coming from Joseph, who'd known him at his worst, the words meant something. Thanks. Tyler's birthday party took place on a sunny Saturday in Central Park, an area Franco had rented for the afternoon. 25 children from Tyler's therapy program attended, along with their families. Franco had insisted on funding the entire event, and for once Samantha had agreed, recognizing that this was as much for him as for Tyler. "You're allowed to celebrate progress," she'd said when he'd proposed the idea. "You've been part of Tyler's journey. You get to share in the joy of how far he's come." Franco organized activities with meticulous attention to sensory needs, quiet zones for children who needed breaks, visual schedules posted at each station, multiple options for food to accommodate different textures and preferences. Music kept low and non-intrusive. Tyler moved through the party with confidence that would have been unimaginable 8 months ago, interacting with other children, responding to questions from adults, showing off his chess skills to anyone interested. When it came time for cake, he stood in front of the group and said clearly, "Thank you for coming. I'm 7 now." The parents applauded, many with tears in their eyes. They understood what each word represented, how much work went into that simple statement. Samantha found Franco standing slightly apart, watching the celebration with an expression she'd learned to recognize. Pride mixed with longing, joy shadowed by memories of a brother who'd never gotten this kind of support. "He would have loved this," she said quietly. Knowing Franco would understand, she meant Luca. "Your brother. He would have loved seeing all these kids celebrated for exactly who they are. I think about that a lot." Franco's voice was rough. What Luca's life might have been like if he'd had access to the kind of therapy and support Tyler receives, if people had seen his potential instead of just his limitations. "You're giving that to other children now. Through the foundation, through Tyler, through changing yourself. That matters, Franco. It's not too late to honor Luca's memory by making sure other kids don't suffer the way he did." Franco pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "How did I get this lucky? Finding you and Tyler. You didn't get lucky. You made a choice in a restaurant hallway to stand up for a vulnerable child when you could have ignored the situation. Everything else followed from that moment of choosing compassion over indifference." As the party wound down, Tyler approached them with a child from his therapy group, a girl named Sophie who had similar speech delays. "Franco, Sophie wants to learn chess. Can you teach?" Franco knelt down to their level, meeting Sophie's shy eyes. "I'd love to teach you. Should we start with how the pieces move?" Sophie nodded, and Tyler grabbed Franco's hand, pulling him toward where the chess set waited. Samantha watched them go. This man who'd once commanded through fear now patiently explaining knight movements to 2 7-year-olds who struggled with verbal communication. Later, as they walked back to Samantha's apartment with Tyler between them holding both their hands, Franco felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the absence of the constant tension that had defined his life for 2 decades. "I got the quarterly report results from my probation officer," he said, as they waited for a crosswalk signal. "Clean across the board. She said if I maintain current trajectory, I might qualify for early termination of supervision in 18 months. "That's wonderful." Samantha squeezed his hand. "What happens after that?" "I don't know." Franco looked down at Tyler, who was watching pigeons with intense focus. "Maybe I just keep doing this. Running the foundation, helping families, being present for the people I care about. Novel concept for me. Living without a grand plan for accumulation of power. Sounds pretty good to me." Tyler looked up at both of them, his expression serious. "Ice cream?" They laughed, the sound carrying across the city noise. Tyler had learned to ask for things he wanted, to communicate needs and desires verbally. Another small victory in a journey filled with them. "Yeah, buddy," Franco said. "We can get ice cream." As they walked toward the ice cream shop Tyler favored, Franco reflected on the distance he'd traveled in 8 months. From a man who solved problems with violence to someone who sat on park benches teaching chess. From an empire built on fear to a foundation built on compassion. From someone who'd spent 17 years running from grief to someone finally learning to honor his brother's memory through action instead of guilt. The path ahead wasn't certain. Threats still existed. Probation supervision continued, and building legitimate businesses from the ashes of criminal enterprise was proving harder than he'd anticipated. But walking through Manhattan with Samantha's hand in his and Tyler's delighted chatter about ice cream flavors filling the air, Franco decided that uncertainty was acceptable. He'd chosen this, all of it. The hard path, the transformation, the risk of caring deeply about people who could be hurt by his past. And he'd choose it again every single day. Because happiness, Franco was learning, wasn't about having everything under control. It was about finding people worth changing for and then doing the work to become someone who deserved them. The rest was just details to figure out along the way. The end.